Hello, so we're going to be having a look at Synthesis, which is an online school that is using AI for tutoring. I went on their website, there's a button that says try me, and I signed up, gave my email address and quickly verified this, and now I'm able to add a student. I'm going to see what happens. So again, I'm going to say so 2012, there we go, save. So if I click on Billy, I'm going to try it out. So I'm on with my Synthesis Tutor.
Oh hey, you must be Billy?
Yes, it's me. Let's click the next button.
Nice to meet you, Billy. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the tutor. Do you want to learn more about me or just get into learning some mathematics?
Let's do some maths.
I like your style. Here are a few lessons. Why don't you pick the one that is most interesting to you?
Oh, I love a bit of the science of change. Let's have a look at this one.
Introduction to Dynamics, the Science of Change. The only thing that stays the same is change. An ancient philosopher named Heraclitus said something like that. He lived around 500 BC. There he is on the right. He looks pretty serious, so maybe this is worth thinking about some more. Do you think Heraclitus was right that the only thing that stays the same is change?
Well, that's a deep question to be asking. Again, remembering I think I put myself in as a 12-year-old. So thinking about this as a 12-year-old, is the only thing that stays the same is change. My initial thought was, I don't know.
To be honest with you, I don't know either. But whether he was right or wrong, we are still left with puzzles about how and why things change. We see things changing around us all the time. Children grow older, into adults. The seasons change, bringing different kinds of weather and ecological patterns. The planets revolve around the sun while spinning on their axes ceaselessly. Even the objects around us that look like they are staying the same are subtly changing, albeit very slowly. Are you interested in diving into the science of change with me?
Yeah, I think I'm interested in that. Again, it's good that it's given some different examples here.
Great. I'm pumped. As we move through this set of lessons, we are going to connect what we learn here to really big ideas about how the world works. We will better understand what scientists mean when they talk about the so-called laws of nature, the nature of time, determinism and randomness, and what all these ideas say about what we can know about the past and predict about the future. Today, we will just start scratching the surface of what scientists call dynamics, which just means how things change over time.
Okay, I'm just going to have a look and see if I can change anything at the moment. I can disable reading out loud, enable voice. Again, I can change the speed. I can change the voice. Oh, that's interesting. I've got Matthew. Let's go for Olivia's.
Today, we will just start scratching the surface of what scientists call dynamics, which just means how things change over time.
And I can change the font as well.
Today, we will just start scratching the surface of what scientists call... Today, we will just start... Okay, enough highfalutin stuff. Let's start putting our toolbox together so that we can approach these issues in a scientific way. The way physicists and mathematicians do. To start, I want us to investigate a little machine I made. There it is in the workspace. My machine only does one thing. It takes objects into one box, and sends objects out of another box. To the left of the machine I have drawn a map that describes what the machine will do, and above the machine I've put a bucket of objects that you can grab and drag into the machine. Go ahead and drag one of the objects from the bucket to the box on the machine that says drop elements here.
Okay, so again, got a good interactive element here. Show me I can't drag this area. But over here, making it clear these are draggable. Let's see if I do it in the wrong thing. They said put it in the drop elements here. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, let's try it.
So you put in the circle. What came out of the machine?
A triangle. So I'm going to put that in. I'll spell it wrong.
Yep, the triangle came out of the machine. Have a look at the map on the left. Do you see anything that would have clued you in that putting the circle in would have caused the triangle to come out?
Okay, so I can see on the map on the left, I've got my circle leads to a triangle, which makes sense. Click yes.
Looking at the map, what do you think will come out of the machine if you instead drag the plus in?
A star.
Go ahead and drop the plus from the bucket into the machine to see if you're right. Does our map make sense now?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Again, it's very basic. I'm not sure where it's leading, but yeah, realizing that a certain input gives you a certain output.
Play around with the machine for a minute. Just let me know when you're ready to continue by pressing the down arrow.
So yeah, if I try something wrong, it's not letting me put a star in.
Cool, let's keep going. I put a square in the bucket. But is there a square on the map?
No, there isn't. Let's click no.
What do you think will happen if you drag it into the machine? Go ahead and try.
Again, it's interesting that the very first thing when she said, I've put a square on the map, in the bucket rather, I immediately thought, what's going to happen when I drag that in? So let's put it in and try.
Yikes.
Okay.
I hope you didn't break it. I'm pretty sure it was your idea to put that square into the machine.
I think it was her idea, but we'll see about that.
Can you put the circle in again to make sure the machine is still working? Okay, good. It seems like the machine doesn't know what to do if we drag something into it that's not on the map. Actually, let's try one more thing. I wonder what would happen if you put the star in. I see that the star is on the map. Do you think it will work?
I don't think it will, because it's an input.
Try and see.
Okay, let's have a look.
Oof.
Again.
You were right. The star is on the map, but the machine still didn't know what to do. Which part of the map is the star in?
So again, it's asked me to focus on the map. I might have missed these parts before, the domain and the range, because I was just looking at the shapes, but now I actually have to look at these headers. Star is in the range. I'm going to click domain just to see if I get it wrong.
I only see it in the range. Let me try adding something to the map. I added a star to the left side of the map, inside the domain box. Do you think the machine will know what to do with the star now?
I don't think it will, because there's no range added.
Let's see. Go ahead and drag the star in from the bucket again. Darn. You were right. That didn't work. Let me try one more thing. Let me add an arrow from the star and something for it to point to in the range.
There we go. Oh, I'll keep remembering to click the button.
There, I added a blue square into the range and drew an arrow to it from the star. Do you think it will work now?
I'm pretty confident it will. Good stuff.
You were right. It worked. I just had to add an arrow from the star in the box marked domain to an object or element on the right side of the map marked range. That way the machine knew what to do with the star.
So one of the things, just reflections at the moment, it's all fully understanding, it's great, it's interactive. What I'm not understanding is what a domain is and what a range is, or why these are significant. Maybe that will come, maybe it was part of pre-learning or a previous lesson, not sure yet. At the moment, I'm just playing a pretty simple cause and effect game.
Do you think putting the red triangle into the machine would work right now?
I think it depends where I put it, because if I put it in the input, it will not work. If I put it in the output, I don't know if it can reverse engineer and get a circle, but we'll see. I'm going to say no.
Right. It won't work because there is no red triangle in the domain that maps to something in the range. By the way, sometimes scientists or mathematicians call a map like ours a function. But sometimes they just call it a map, like we are. We will talk more about functions, or maps, as we go along. They play a very important role in what we are building. Speaking of maps, I noticed that something new happened with our map when we added the star to the domain. Do you see it? Which element is in both the domain and the range?
The star?
It is. The star is in both the domain and range. Every other shape so far has been in either one or the other. This gives me an idea for something else to try. Indulge me here for a moment. Drop the plus into the machine. Okay, the plus went in, and the star came out. I also emptied the bucket, so we can't drag anything in from there. But if you had a star to drag into the machine, would that work?
Yeah, it would, and I think you might have seen earlier I actually tried that and dragged the star into the input before this was suggested.
So here is my big idea. Try dragging the star from the output box. It worked.
Okay.
Huzzah! Do you think it will work if you take the blue square from the output and put it back into the input?
Well, it's not letting me drag it so at the moment. No.
Go ahead and try. Drag the blue square back into the input.
I wonder if the other thing you can do is drag it into the bucket. That would be interesting.
You were able to drag it in, but of course the machine didn't know what to do with it, as we can see from the map. Let's do the same thing we did for the star and add the blue square to the domain and draw an arrow to one of the shapes in the range.
So can we do that myself?
I put the plus back in the bucket for you to drag into the machine again, whenever you're ready. Now drag the star in from the... Now drag the square in from the out... Now drag the star in from the output. How long could we keep doing this for?
Forever.
Yes. We could go on and on like this indefinitely. And notice we can do this without drawing from the bucket at all, except to begin.
So again, one of the interesting things is with the voice, it's very nice having the voice, but I'm finding it quite slow. So obviously under the options, there was the option to disable reading out loud. So if I click on that, will I work quicker? There is another big word to learn here. When you take what comes out of the machine and put it back into the machine again, there is called recursion. So again, the benefit of the voice is where I've got a new word, like I presume it's pronounced recursion. It's pronouncing it for you. Yeah, it's interesting that the voice is also helpful just in focusing. So I'm going to put it back on.
There is another big word to learn here.
I'm going to speed it up a little bit.
There is another big word to learn here. When you take what comes out of the machine and put it back into the machine again, that is called recursion. Fancy.
So again, it's interesting that it's faster, but now it sounds like a bit of a chipmunk.
All right. Let's back up and connect this to what we were talking about in the beginning of the lesson, dealing with a changing world scientifically. One way scientists explore how the world works is to build a little toy world, set up all the rules of that world, and then just let their toy world run to see what happens. This is actually what we've begun to do. Build our own little world. A very, very simple one. We need to add one other idea here, the concept of state. A central idea across the sciences is that things we study are in various states at different times. For example, if we wanted to talk about the state of a light bulb, we might say it has two states, on or off. And this state changes over time. Sometimes the light is on, other times it is off. In the image in the workspace, what is the state of the light bulb? Yes, I can see the filament glowing. So we can say the light bulb is in the on state in this image. Or let's imagine that we have a terrarium with a lizard inside of it in our bedroom. That's like its own little world. We notice that the lizard does different things at different times. Sometimes he is eating, other times he is sunbathing, or sleeping, or pooping. Yes, lizards poop too.
Great way of getting the kids involved. They always like poop in anything.
We could say the state of our little terrarium world is described by whatever the lizard is doing at some moment in time. And by the way, the lizard is his own boss. He gets to decide what he is going to do. So let's see how we might describe our terrarium lizard world using our machine. I've put together a map where each element is a state of our terrarium world. I said that the lizard is his own boss, but just this once I'd like for you to tell him what to do first. Drag an element into the machine from the bucket to tell him what to do.
So again, it's the importance of the interactive feature is really good because, again, when there's too much text, I even now feel like I'm beginning to lose focus or attention, and maybe, to be honest, because it's obviously quite easy for me, for a 12-year-old, maybe they'd be a bit more focused and engaged. But let's try this out. We're going to eat.
So you decided that the lizard should eat first. Very good. Let's call that our initial condition. The initial condition is the first state of our lizard world, and it is something we had to choose as the builders of this little world.
And again, the benefit of here is I chose eat, another student might have chosen something very different, and the response from the tutor is bespoke to me, so it's responding to what I'm doing.
But what will happen next? Well, that is up to the lizard. In fact, he has already decided what he will do next. What came out of the machine when you put eat in?
He slept.
Yes. And that is what the lizard has decided to do next. Sleep. But what will he decide to do next, after he sleeps? To find out, recurse on the state of the world again. That is, drag the sleep state from the output of the machine back to the input.
So again, you've got some terminology there, but it's put it into a practical scenario. Because he's eaten, then he's slept, now he's sleeping.
Every time you recurse
He's
on
gonna
the state,
sunbathe.
that is, drag the output back to the input and apply the map to it, you are playing the hand of nature in our little world. You tick the clock of the lizard world one step forward each time. Tick, tock.
And again, it's interesting the words, the kind of the language it's using, and whether this is going to stick, because the concept is definitely sticking with me. And again, maybe my brain works in a particular way, but the word recurse, which is a new word for me, to be honest, yeah, is that sticking? Is the word state sticking? And that will be important as we go on.
Keep recursing on the state a few more times.
So again, when she said that, I knew what she meant by recursing, so I need to keep doing this. And they're going through the process.
Notice there is a new item in the workspace, the history of states. As you continue to play the hand of nature and step the clock forward, our history of states gets longer. The lizard transitions from state to state according to the map. So the map is the law that governs our lizard world. And we apply that law to the current state of the world to see what happens next. When a map is used this way, we can refer to it technically as a dynamical law. And it is related to what scientists mean when they refer to the laws of nature. Keep recursing a few more times. So you can see, except for the initial condition, the world basically runs by itself. In our example, we can say that the lizard decides what to do. Of course, right now the world needs you to drag the output back to the input to keep time running. But that is a very repetitive job, so we could just make that happen automatically.
Interesting. Be interesting to now think, I don't know if they'll go into this, but thinking about how this would apply in a different situation. Because again, I'm getting it with the lizard. What about, it made me think, what about myself? What about other things in the world? When are they not as repetitive as these things? Because I know sometimes after I eat, I'm not necessarily going to sleep. I might do a range of different things.
Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Drag a state into the input box as an initial condition, and I will recurse on it a few times so you don't have to.
Okay.
Okay, let's learn one more new word. We are learning a lot of them, but I know you can handle it. When you drop an initial condition into the machine, and then a sequence of states is produced by recursing over that state, we call that sequence a trajectory. So that is what is contained in our history box below the machine. A trajectory that formed when you set the initial condition to sun and then let the world run.
Okay, so again, new word thrown in.
You've done
Be
really well
interested
throughout
to see
this
how
lesson.
that's going to be
Great job.
reiterated later on.
Before we close out, let's review the fundamental pieces we need to begin developing our science of change.
Good review.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what we just learned. Please help me finish my sentences.
Okay, I can do that, I hope.
When you drag an element into the machine, the element that comes out is determined by
Recursion.
Interesting. When you recurse, you drag elements in from the output, which would indeed determine what elements come next. But it is not the key piece that tells us what is going to come out next, whether we are recursing or not.
Okay, so clearly I got that wrong. So maybe that's
I was
something
thinking
else.
of the map.
Ah.
I've put the map we are using back up in the workspace.
So again, bringing back in what I misunderstood. Clearly I've missed something here. It'd be interesting to see whether I can go. Right. Clearly didn't read the question properly. Rushing ahead as usual. Or maybe the question wasn't worded in a way that I would word it.
The map determines which element comes out based on what goes in. If you change the map, you will change what comes out.
Right. Again, reiterating, going
Drag an
over my
element in from the
misunderstanding.
bucket so we can see something come out again based on the map.
So again, let's drag it in.
You put the circle in, and according to the map the square should have come out, which it did. Okay, let's keep going. You can apply the map to whatever element comes out of the machine by taking that element and putting it back in. We call that.
Now this one's recursion, but again, it's interesting that it didn't just let me move on from my misunderstanding. It helped to go back over that again to reinforce that. So again, let's try it. Recursion for a second time.
Yokorino. When we repeatedly apply the map to whatever comes out of the machine, we call that recursion. Drag the square back into the input to recurse over the map once more. Even though there was nothing in the bucket, there was an element in the output that you were able to put into the machine. I reset the machine and displayed the history box below it. Drag in an element, then recurse a few times. Alright, let's keep pushing ahead. By recursing a few times, you generated a sequence of elements in the history box. We call that sequence.
I think I remember this one. A trajectory.
Ding ding ding. That's it. By recursing over the map you are generating a sequence of elements we call a trajectory.
So again, a benefit here is instant feedback. So that's really helpful.
And before you were able to recurse, you had to drag an element in from the bucket, which became the first element in the trajectory. In this case, you dragged the triangle in from the bucket, which you can see as the first element in your trajectory. In other words, when you drag the triangle element in from the bucket, you set.
Okay, I'm thinking it's the initial condition because that was the first thing I did. But it's also interesting that it has adapted the lesson based on what I did. So it's not a generic response, it's picking up that it was the triangle that I put in.
Booyah! Before you begin recursing, there is no element to pull from the output back into the input. So you have to kick off a trajectory with an initial condition. When we recurse like this to generate trajectories, we can call our map.
When we recurse, like, again, reread it. Interesting, can I redo this?
When we recurse like this to generate trajectories, we can call our map.
What can we call our map? When we recurse like this to generate trajectories, I'm thinking it's a dynamic law.
Yes, our map serves as our dynamical law and determines how things change in time in the little worlds we construct. A map becomes a dynamical law when it is used this way. The dynamical law, given an initial condition, will tell us how our little world changes from moment to moment. That is, it will produce a trajectory. And the thing that changes from moment to moment in the little world is...
Things that change, and the thing that changes from moment to moment is the state is changing. Because again, we think back to the light bulb, what changed? Again, the state.
The others. The little world is in some state at each moment, and changes from state to state from moment to moment. Like a light bulb can be off, or on. We could say off and on are its states. Or like our lizard could be sleeping, or sunning, or pooping, or eating. Those were its states. Or like the little shape world you just ran on the right. Its first state was triangle. Hopefully that helped clear up the new words we learned today. If you want, you could run through the review again. Or we can just move on and review if we need to at a later time.
And so again, for me, in terms of learning, I think I've grasped what it's talking about. Again, good hands-on practice. It's gone over the words, the vocabulary. My big question is, will I remember this? You know, it's all right, I can remember it right at this moment. Will I remember it? So again, it's about how's this going to be reinforced at a later point.
Sounds good. Keep playing around with the machine if you feel like it. I've added a little button in the bottom right that will reset the machine. Just hit the continue button in our chat here when you're ready to move on.
So again, it's interesting. We're learning some great concepts. My big question is still why. It's not sunk into me why I'm doing this.
Heraclitus said that the only thing that stays the same is change. Was that true in the worlds we built, such as the lizard world?
So again, there was a lot of difference, so I would say yes.
The states of our system kept changing as we recursed, perhaps how Heraclitus imagined. But one thing did stay the same. The dynamical law that was defined by our map. The states changed while the map stayed the same. Interesting.
Yeah, and as I was saying earlier, that's with a simple map. Maybe, like a human being, the map is a lot more complex.
This is just the beginning of our exploration into dynamics. I hope to see you again soon so we can dive deeper. Would you like that?
I would. Well, what would happen if I said no, I wouldn't like that?
Well, we shouldn't try to force it. That can make learning a real drag. But I do hope you'll give me a chance to change your mind. I'll be here if you decide you want to keep going. Until then, take care.
So again, not a low-key approach. It's offering the learning.
How was the lesson?
Yeah, I kind of liked it.
Where do you want to go next?
Okay, so I've got some different options here. Again, if I click on this one again.
Introduction to Dynamics, the science of change. The only thing that stays the same is change.
It's picking
An
up
ancient
the
philosopher named Heraclitus said something like that.
same lesson.
He lived around 500 BC. There he is on the right. He looks pretty serious, so maybe this is worth thinking about some more.
So it's the same lesson as I've already done. It would be interesting if it had picked that up and said, oh, you've already done this lesson, here's the next stage. Is there a way I can skip to the end? Because, again, I wanted to change my mind and say, actually, I do want to take this further. So is there a lesson? Again, I don't know if there's any other options here. No. I'm going to go home.
Where do you want to go next?
So I think it's a good indication of what a personalised tutor could do. Obviously, it really depends on the attention span of the student. Is it compelling enough? Again, good lesson. There were some gaps for me in terms of, again, understanding the concept of why, what was this about. But maybe that would have been better if I had done previous lessons that are built into this. Or maybe that's where the teacher would explain the purpose of the different lessons. So I've learned something, but I don't understand what I've learned or why I've learned it. So that's an interesting thing to think about. But again, all of these things probably are quite easily to overcome and can show just how AI could be used to be a personalised tutor for a student.